So think about a dictionary much like you think about an actual dictionary. So like the book that's a dictionary. When you go and open that dictionary book, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a keyword and the definition of that keyword. So I'm looking for a key and a value, right? So if you're looking up the word awesome, you would go to the A section and then find the word awesome because it's in alphabetical. And then you would actually get the value of awesome. Now, Python dictionaries, and actually dictionaries in all sorts of programming languages, work this way, where it's basically we know what the key is and we have a value, right? Or we may not know what the key is, but there are these things called key value pairs, just like inside of a dictionary. And actually, it's not a whole lot different than a list, which we'll talk about in a second. But the dictionary itself, you have a key and a value. So that's really how it works. So it's much like, or it's very similar to using some sort of variable and something equal to that variable. So let's go ahead and do it. And I'll say a dict equals to curly brackets now. So instead of square brackets, they're the curly brackets. They're on the same button on your keyboard, depending on what kind of keyboard you have, but these are the curly brackets. So inside of this, we can actually start to define what a dictionary is. So I can use these curly brackets. Let's go ahead and just write a blank one. And notice I get the little 3 dots. That's basically giving me a continuation. So I'll say ABC equals to, or excuse me, ABC quotes, in quotes, and then colon. And then we're going to say a string. And then I'm going to press enter again, close off the curly brackets, press enter, and now I see a dictionary. So I can do it again. Let's try that one more time. And I'm going to open up curly brackets. I'm going to press up a few times in ABC, put a comma after it, and then say another, and then the colon, and then another string. And quotes, make sure you close off the quotes. And then we're going to do yet another one, yet another, and then another string. And close off the curly bracket, and now we see what's called a dictionary. So it has a key value pair. So on the left is the key, on the right is the value, much like an actual dictionary, right? So you have your keyword and then your definition of that keyword. In this case, we have our keyword, which is a string, but then the value doesn't have to be a string. It could be an integer. It could be a list. It could be another dictionary. It can be all sorts of things. And it also could be even a variable that's referencing something else. So when we had this a dict up here, we defined a dictionary. And now what I can do is I can actually set items in this dictionary. So if I use a bracket and say ABC, and then set it equal to something, I'll say another new string and hit enter. This is actually setting the key value of ABC to another new string. So if I go to a dict, I see now I have a BC in here as part of the dictionary. So if I did that again, but this time changing the string to just another and going to a dict, it changed the value of that key. Right, so now I have what's called a key value pair dictionary. So I have the key and the value. Now the reason I said it's not a whole lot different than using a list is because now I can actually reference items inside of this dictionary based off of their value. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that dictionary that we created just a second ago, and I'll say new ABC equals to that dictionary. And I'll print out new ABC by just typing it. And we see this dictionary. So now what if I want to get the value of ABC? It's really simple. I'll say new underscore ABC, and now using those brackets, ABC, I now can actually reference this directly. Now this is obviously a little bit different than the list, right? So if I said the list equals to 1, 2, 3, and I wanted to get 2, I have to use the position number. So the list, and I say position 1, that gives me that 1. Where a dictionary goes off of the key, it doesn't go off of the position, because actually the dictionary doesn't really hold positions. If it starts to get really big, Python will store it in an efficient way but not necessarily hold the position in the same spot. So for example, if I did new ABC and I did position 0, I get a key error, right? Instead of an index error, I get a key error, right? So the index error happens with a list. So if I said 100, I see index error. Key happens with a dictionary. So the key being that 0 is not a key. So let's actually try and make one. So I'll say new ABC 0 equals to another new item in the dictionary. Press enter. And now if I do new ABC 0, it gives me that value. Now, some programming languages will not allow you to actually store an integer as the key. Now, Python 3 does, but let's check out Python 2. So now that I'm in Python 2, I'm going to say ABC equals to an empty dictionary. ABC 0 equals to another. ABC 0, and we're actually able to get it. So in both Python 2 and 3, we can actually use integers as our key. In other programming languages, you might run into an error there, but it will show you that you did run into an error, which is really nice about programming languages. But it is a lot different than a list. Just like, so in our dictionary, we can reference it by the key and get that value. In a list, we have to reference it by our position number. So there's all sorts of things that we can do with this more, but that's essentially what a dictionary is. Now, of course, dictionaries themselves, so if we did, we got new ABC as our dictionary, and we did new ABC equals to the new ABC brackets list, so the key being list, and we put it equal to the list, we could say new ABC. It also now has a list in it. So you can actually put a dictionary inside of a dictionary. You can also do new ABC, ABC2 is equal to new ABC. Ooh, what happened here? So what I just did is I actually created the dictionary inside of the dictionary. So as we see here, we've got positions, or the key of 0 being equal to this. We have ABC2 equals to a dictionary, and then list is equal to 1, 2, 3. So we have a few different things here. If I did new ABC with the the key value of ABC2, I now see that it's actually coming out with the exact same thing. So it's kind of like reiterating inside of itself, which makes it a little bit challenging, but we do see that the dictionaries can be inside of a dictionary, and if you have it inside yourself, it's making a dictionary loop that probably doesn't close. So that's something that's kind of cool, kind of weird, but as far as it's concerned, dictionaries can hold all sorts of things that are really cool. Now, lists can do the same. Lists can hold a list. Lists can also hold a dictionary. So that's some of the basics of dictionaries and how they relate to lists. And now let's actually talk about tuples, or also known as tuples. Of the three data types, tuples are probably the most boring, only because they are very similar to lists, but they just are a little bit more finicky than lists are. So tuples are two-value pairs, very similar to like a mixture of a list and a dictionary. So without talking about it, let's actually take a look. And I'll just say tup equals to, and now we're using parentheses. So if I do tup equals to parentheses and then ABC, comma, ABC, and oops, let's make sure we close off these quotes. So tup, that's an example of a tuple or a tuple. And we can actually have tuples of tuples. So if I do tup equals to, and open up that parentheses and then say another, and yet, and then another tuple, more, and I can keep going, right? So tup, and then I could do tup 0, and I get that answer, tup 0, 0, 0, like that. I can actually get that first item. So not really that exciting, I think, but it is a data type that is used quite a bit inside of Python. It's really good for certain things like choices in using Django. So like in a database, right, you could have a database value and a display value. So like what the database registers it as and what your users see it as. So that's something that's nice about using tuples, but or tuples, depending on how you want to call it. But I honestly don't think this as a data type is used nearly as much as lists or dictionaries, although some developers really like using tuples. I just particularly don't use them that often, except for when it comes to, like I said, using it in the database. But as far as how it works, it's if we wanted to add to it, so we would do tup plus equals to another tuple, so another or yet another, and then we'll do 1, 2, 3, and now we've got tup, and we've actually added so the two items here. So it didn't actually add it as its own tuple; it just added these two items to the tuple, right? So it didn't create it like its own tuple. So if we wanted to create it like its own tuple, then I would make it its own tuple and put a comma at the end. And now if I look at it, I see these two items as their own, and then finally a tuple item at the end, right? So again, it's not much different than a list, except now what it has is in positions, it kind of has something similar to a key value pair, or realistically, it's a lot more like a list within a list. So I'll say the list equals to an empty list, and then I'll say the list ABC equals to, so just like virtually doing that same first position one is what I'm doing here. And I'll say another, comma, another. And now if I say the list dot append and ABC, I'll see the list. And now I've got another, comma, another. So it's not a whole lot different than that. It's just tuples work just slightly different in the sense that you are going to put them in here. So that's another data type. Again, not a whole lot different than lists, but it kind of has a similar, like they're used in a similar way as dictionaries are, but based off of a position, which is really cool. So that's it for a lot of these data storage types, that is lists, dictionaries, and tuples. What we need to talk about now is how to actually go through this data. We've talked about some versions of it, but we haven't talked about that specifically. But we also want to talk about conditionals. This is if-then statements. So those are the things that we're going to be covering in the next few videos. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we hope to see you tomorrow.